Hey everyone, welcome back to Ackernews. Yes, I was able to keep this up for 3 weeks straight. In comparison to last week's kind of onslaught of video game news, we had a little bit of a slow week this week, but that doesn't mean we didn't get some interesting stuff announced and sort of talked about this week. There's still a decent amount to go over, and I think it'll be a pretty interesting roundup we got going here. So I guess without further ado, let's just jump right into this week's rapid fire news. Yes, I am still doing this segment. However, I am going to try to do a little bit more quickly. I'm going to try to get through it a little bit more briskly, if you will, than in the previous week, so we can actually call it a rapid-fire segment. And just like last week, we have 7 topics that we're going to be talking about in this week's rapid-fire news, the first of which comes from Kotaku, and is talking about a new product that Razer has announced, and I think even released already, that is made for mobile gamers. And that is the Razer Gaming Finger Sleeves, at least as Razer has deemed to call them. They're these sort of, I don't even know what they're made of. It looks like fabric that you put over your index finger and your thumb, or I guess just whatever fingers you want to put them on, and it sort of helps you keep a grip on your smartphone while you're playing Fortnite on your phone or whatever game you play on your phone. As a pro gamer, right? You gotta have these Razer brandings all over your fingers as you're playing your games, of course. But seriously, I would not be caught dead wearing these out in public. This is something you'd have to wear in your house. Otherwise, I don't know what you would do. It would definitely look weird. I'm probably going to show you guys a picture on screen. You've probably been seeing it this whole time, and you definitely know what I'm talking about. I guess it was only a matter of time before Razer broke into the mobile gaming market somehow. Next up, we have the announcement that Ren and Stimpy, the old Nickelodeon cartoon characters from that really weird show, are coming to Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl as a tag team duo. It seems like they sort of fight in the same way as like Duck Hunt Dog or Banjo-Kazooie. Not really so much ice climbers, because they kind of like do their own thing and they switch out, but Duck Hunt Dog and Banjo-Kazooie sort of like they're like one unit, but they're 2 different characters, I guess you could say. Like for Duck Hunt Dog, you have the dog and the duck, and then for Banjo-Kazooie, you have Banjo and Kazooie. They kind of like fight in a way where like each different move is either going to use one person or the other, or both of them together. I was never the biggest fan of Ren and Stimpy personally, but I do think it's interesting that they're coming to the game like this really specific and niche show, at least nowadays. If they're taking characters from a show like that, then kind of everything's on the table at that point, right? So, fingers crossed for Hugh Neutron. Alright, and now we have another sort of update to how the game Super Monkey Ball Banana Mania is going to work. They've been sort of trickling news out about the game over the last couple of months, and this latest update is in reference to how you're going to be able to like sort of buy customizations and things like that for your characters and like your game modes, your courses, whatever it may be. And that comes in the form of the Super Monkey Ball Banana Mania Point Shop, as it's called, where you can buy all types of different characters. They showed like a screenshot of like other characters that you can buy. Got a bunch of different ones here that are pretty cool looking, I think, at least in my opinion. And there's like shirts that you can customize your characters. You can customize the ball of your monkey ball, whatever you want to call it. Like things for photo modes, all that stuff, and it's just looking really cool. The game is shaping up to be probably like really weirdly one of my most anticipated games of the year. So I'm pretty excited to see how the point shop works out. Oh yeah, and they said that specifically points can only be earned in-game and cannot be bought separately. And I hope that we're able to hold them to that, and that they don't sort of introduce a new in-game currency later on down the road where you can buy points. That would not be good. They already have DLC anyway, so I don't think they're going to do that, but still got to hold them to this. Continuing on with the Sega news here, we've got the announcement of Sonic-inspired G Fuel. That's pretty much all you can say about it. It's Sonic G Fuel. The flavor is Party Punch. I don't know what that means, but maybe it tastes like Sonic. I don't know. You have to buy it and find out. And next we've got something that isn't technically gaming news, I guess. It's sort of card games, but not really video games. But it's still pretty cool, and I wanted to mention it. That is the announcement that Konami and Yu-Gi-Oh! Are going to be putting out this this case, this Kaiba themed case. I don't know if anyone remembers the scene in Yu-Gi-Oh! Where he sort of comes into Yugi's grandpa's shop and goes, "I'll give you all of these." It's that case from that specific that scene, or just the case that he carries around. And it comes with 3 Blue Eyes White Dragons. I believe they're secret rare, as well as Kaiba's deck. I think it comes with Kaiba's deck. According to the Famitsu article that I'm reading right now, there's going to be all 61 cards that Kaiba used in ultra rare. So that's pretty cool. And yeah, I'm just I saw this and I was like, wow, that brought back some memories for me. So I just wanted to share it with you guys. Okay, now we got a pretty weird one here, and that is that Jake from State Farm is a character that appears in NBA 2K22. I watched the video of how he actually sort of is worked into the game, and your character just, I think, sort of talks to him, and they just like sort of talk about random stuff for like a couple of minutes, and he says his famous like State Farm catchphrase or whatever, and your character's like, oh, that's so good, you said the phrase or whatever. Honestly, I'm not surprised that 2K has gone this far. Like, they're at the point where they're actually putting characters in the game that are ads. So, I mean, I don't really know how much further we can go from here, but it's definitely a bit out of place in my opinion. And for our last bit of rapid fire news, we have the sort of announcement that Japan is going to be getting a Zelda Skyward Sword soundtrack that sort of comes with a bunch of different little accoutrements, whatever you want to call them. Maybe that's not the word for it, I don't know. But there's a special limited edition of this soundtrack that comes with an outer box that has like a really cool cloud design and like very stylized sort of design there, very stylish. It's got like the Zelda logo and all this stuff. The CDs all look really cool with the different colors, and the Triforce is on there. It looks really nice. The limited edition comes with also a special music box. It's like a little clear plastic box that plays the Ballad of the Goddess, which I believe is the main theme from Skyward Sword. I'm not 100% sure of that, but I don't know the titles of the songs, obviously, but I don't know that I would pay the nearly $80 or more to get this limited edition of the soundtrack just for this little music box and this outer box, but it is a pretty cool little thing to have. And that's all there is for this week's rapid fire news. I think I cut off a little bit of time there, at least a little bit. But without further ado, let's move on to the bigger news for this week. And for our first piece of big news, if you will, we've got to talk about the Switch firmware update that came out this week. I believe it's update 13.0.0. I'm not, yeah, here it is, 13.0.0, so I was right on that. But there are a bunch of different things that this update sort of added to the Switch, but the biggest thing was that Bluetooth capability is sort of finally enabled. We knew it was in the console that you could use it for a while now, but it wasn't actually enabled. You couldn't use it, but now you can, and that's pretty cool. Personally, for someone who plays video games on the ceiling a lot, I think this is a pretty great change. I can actually use Bluetooth headphones with my console and not have to attach them to my projector or whatever. It's honestly pretty surprising that it took Nintendo this long to implement Bluetooth into a console. It feels like that would be something that would come out, sort of with the launch of the system. You just have it baseline. But it is Nintendo, so, they're a little behind. They're a couple of years behind everybody else on some things, But other than the Bluetooth, we also had sort of some reports that it's done a couple of other things, some other decently relevant things to talk about here. One was that the update apparently boosts some loading speeds or boot times of some Switch games. I don't know which specifically, but according to Nintendo Life, they've done a little bit of testing, and it seems to be kind of random depending on the game. Super Mario 3D All-Stars seems to load a little bit slower, actually, and Super Mario 3D World plus Bowser's Fury is actually loading a bit faster, so it's anyone's guess what actually is going on here. Personally, the Switch load speeds never really bothered me, so this isn't a huge deal to me, but it's something that, is actually worth noting, I think. And one other thing that I saw was that you're actually able to share longer Twitter posts from the Switch console if you're sort of posting to Twitter from your console. You know, you can share your pictures or your clips on Twitter or whatever. The character limit has been increased from 140 to 280, which I believe is the current maximum that you can have in English. In Japanese, I think it's still 140 characters on Twitter, so maybe that's why it was still kind of at 140 for the Switch. They didn't really account for Western Twitter, I guess. But yeah, it's kind of cool to see that you're able to actually write full Twitter posts from the Switch now. And sticking with the Switch for our next piece of big news, we've got the reduction in price for the Switch base model in Europe. Nintendo announced that the base model will be going down from £279.99 to £259.99 and €329.99 to €299.99. Nintendo has stated that this is to reflect the new exchange rate of European currencies, as well as the introduction of the OLED model, which I personally find pretty interesting. Why is that interesting, you may ask? Well, that's because Nintendo has not announced, well, they actually specifically said that they are not going to be reducing the price of the Switch base model in the US. Now, you might be wondering, oh, why would that be the case? Well, I don't really know. Only they know, but obviously the Switch OLED is going to be coming to the US as well as Europe, so why would that not warrant a price drop of the base Switch model over here as well? Yeah, I don't really understand that logic, but I guess it's Nintendo, so logic doesn't really apply here. Yeah. Personally, I'm of the opinion that the Switch does need a price drop, no matter what the country is. The current price is just too much for for a console that's been out for this many years and that has a new revision coming out. I get that they're still selling like a ton of units, but by reducing the price slightly, not only will you sort of attract buyers who weren't really interested in the Switch at the full price, but you're also going to be gaining some more consumer goodwill because you're actually, you know, implementing consumer-friendly practices by reducing the price of your console after it's been out for so many years and you're introducing a revision of said console. Now, of course, it is important to note that this may just be something that Nintendo is saying, you know. They might be saying that there's no plans currently for a reduction in the Switch's price in the US, but there have been many occasions where companies, Nintendo included, have said that they have no plans for doing something or that they're not going to do something, and then they do it anyway. So it's not really, you know, a guarantee that there's never going to be a price drop of the Switch base model. Even, you know, there may be one in the near future, but they just didn't want to announce it yet. You never know with these things, you know, with big companies like this, they're just not ready to announce certain things. But personally, if the news is to be believed that there is no plans for a reduction in the Switch base model's price, then, you know, that's a little bit scummy in my opinion. Alright, now let's break things up a little bit by talking about this week's Gamer of the Week. I know you're all waiting for the Gamer of the Week, so here it is. This week's Gamer of the Week is going to be Cake Assault, who is a Rivals of Aether player who won the Rivals of Aether tournament that took place at the Riptide Show, I think it was called, in Sandusky, Ohio, on September 10th to September 12th. Now, of course, winning a Rivals of Aether tournament is, you know, grounds enough to be the Gamer of the Week, but specifically, I want to talk about this video that I'll play for you guys now and we'll watch it together. Let's go. Okay, so to be clear on what happened there, I think it needs a little bit of explaining, but he popped off. I don't know if everyone knows what a pop-off is. I'm assuming they do, but a pop-off is when you win something and like you sort of celebrate, like yeah, I did it. Not like that, but you pop off when you win something. And so what he did was he starts like pumping his arms like yeah. But in the process of doing that, he actually dislocated, I believe it was his left shoulder. So he's like on the ground, like in agony, but at the same time, like really happy that he won the tournament. So and then after the actual clip that I'm going to show you guys, or like I showed you guys, he actually gets up and he starts only popping off or like cheering with only one arm after that, so you can like tell that he actually injured his left arm. But so I decided to make him the gamer of the week because, you know, how could you not be a true gamer when you actually hurt yourself by getting so excited over a game, you know? So this week's gamer of the week is going to be Cake Assault. I hope that he makes full recovery and that he gets back to playing his Rivals of Aether. All right, getting back to the bigger news here, the more serious stuff. Next, we're going to talk about the interview between Hideki Kamiya, Hideki, whatever you want to say, whichever order you prefer. The interview that he had with VGC, or Video Game Chronicle, I believe is the name of the website. And in that article, he talks about how he believes that the current scarcity and rising prices of classic video games, retro video games, whatever you want to call them, is holding back game culture as well as the gaming industry. Here's a quote directly from the interview. Kamiya said, "As a collector myself, I understand the lure of wanting to have that game in the sealed package. People want the value of that package and not necessarily of the game itself. But as a fan, it's a problem if somebody wants to play a game but they can't get it because it's being traded in these ridiculous marketplaces." He went on to elaborate, "The responsibility for keeping those games available belongs to the company that owns the IP. If people want to play a classic game and they can't because it's not available on new platforms and can't be found in its original form either, that's like a threat. It's holding game culture back. The people who own the rights to these games should be actively making moves to preserve game culture and making games available to everyone who wants to play them." And personally, I couldn't agree more. Of course, I am a retro game collector myself, but before I'm a retro game collector, I am just someone who enjoys playing video games. I prefer to, you know, I get games that I want to play. I don't just get games that I want to look at or that I want to buy as an investment. I buy them to play them and to enjoy them. So what Mr. Kamiya, Hideki Kamiya, says here really resonates with me personally. I and a lot of people that grew up around the same time as me have the distinct privilege of having, you know, sort of experienced a lot of the older consoles as they came out. Like, I mean, I was born around the time of the N64 and the SNES, so you know, I got to experience a lot of the older games as I grew up. You know, I was there for the release of the GameCube, the Wii, and all these games, all these consoles. But, you know, nowadays there's people that didn't get to experience that, or they were around to experience it but just weren't interested in video games at the time. So I don't think it's really fair or, you know, justifiable to sort of withhold these games from people that want to play them. I think what Hideki Kamiya means when he says that they're holding back game culture is that, you know, people nowadays, kids nowadays, and even people that didn't get to experience older gaming consoles and games while they were growing up, don't have ready access to these older games, these classic games. Like, take the Switch, for example. You pretty much have, you know, the Nintendo Switch Online service, you have the SNES and the NES, you know, services, whatever you want to call them. But they have very slim collections. You know, there's also been some re-releases on the Switch, but not nearly to the level that you would want. And this, you know, inability to play older games, older classic games on the newer consoles is having an effect. I don't know if I would call it a negative effect or a positive effect. It's having an effect, at least, on the current generation of gamers who are growing up now, playing the Switch and, you know, the PS5, and not really so much the Xboxes, Xbox Series S and X, whatever it is. But since they don't really have ready access to these older games, they won't really associate that with gaming. They won't have that experience sort of you know, within them, if you will, as they grow up. And then, you know, that may affect if they ever become game developers. You know, they won't have that sort of knowledge of those older games, so they won't really, you know, build upon those to make better games. And, you know, even if they don't join the gaming industry, just, you know, if they're just gamers growing up and they just never heard of these games, you know, we might see a point later down the road where these games, you know, sort of just straight up die out and they're no longer available and not really talked about. You know, some of these older, you know, really old games that are really great in my opinion, and it should be, you know, sort of pressed on into the future. And like Hideki Kamiya said, it's really up to these big companies that own all these great classic IPs to allow them to be played on current generation hardware. Otherwise, people will have to turn to emulation, which, you know, is fine in and of itself, but For some people, they're just never going to go down that route or even find emulation until like way later in life, and that would mean sort of the same thing, that they just sort of missed out on the experience of growing up with these really awesome games. As far as I know, it's a relatively easy thing to do. All you really have to do is make emulators for your current generation consoles and allow older games to be either purchased or played for free on services like Nintendo Switch Online. I guess not technically free, but you know what I mean. And then you at least have the option of playing those games if you so choose. And the companies make money. They make tons of money. So I don't really know why they're doing this, but it seems like a lot of companies really want to get past older consoles, older games. And that really doesn't sit well with me personally. But okay, that was a pretty big topic, pretty heavy topic. So let's add another like sort of lighter topic, I guess technically, in here, and that is the situation going on with Genshin Impact and their new character. This is not really something I ever really thought that I'd be talking about, but here we are. It's a pretty funny story, so let's just talk about it. So there was a character released recently for Genshin Impact. I think it was earlier this month. And the name of the character was Raiden Shogun in the English pronunciation, however you want to say it. And there was a little bit of controversy going on surrounding this character. So Genshin Impact, like a lot of other games, has a sort of beta testing area, a PTR, whatever you want to call it, where people can test upcoming characters and whatever it may be, upcoming content, and sort of provide their feedback, and then the developers can change depending on what that feedback is. So they tested out this new character, and then they found out that it synergized really well with this other character, and it was like a really OP combo. We don't really have to go too deep into this, but essentially what happened was people bought or like rolled on Raiden Shogun because they had like the sort of preconceived notion that she was going to be really good with these other characters. But it turns out that one of the things that MiHoYo, the company that makes Genshin Impact, changed was this sort of synergy with these other characters. I'm not, super into Genshin Impact. I never really played the game, but just based on the article, it seems that that's the case. So what do you do when a game company, legitimately changes something that was sort of said to be, either overpowered or really good, and then you sort of roll on this to get the character? Well, you threaten to sue them, I guess. That's what some fans are doing in China. The idea of suing a company over, a gacha game or, just like a character that was changed legitimately because of concerns that people had or because it was too overpowered based on their data or whatever they had. It seems pretty funny, at least looking in from the outside. But I guess to the players on the ground, if you will, it was a serious enough matter to warrant a lawsuit. I believe that MiHoYo is being accused of sort of deception or at least sloppiness or whatever you want to call it. And that was what made people buy these characters, and they didn't really announce or like change anything about the character specifically to like denote that they had done anything to this sort of synergy with these other characters. But it's kind of debatable as to whether or not they really had to do that in order to before you give them their money, like they don't really have to tell you that like, oh, then you're giving your money to buy a character with this specific synergy with this other character. I don't know, it's just a really silly situation in my opinion, and that's why I wanted to bring it to your attention. Alright, and now the last thing we're going to talk about, last thing I'm going to mention here for this episode of Ackernews is going to be this week's Deal of the Week, and that is going to be on the Rare Replay. I believe it's the digital version only on the Microsoft Store. It's available for only $7.49 currently, and that is for the next 3 days as of the recording of this, which is, I believe this is like Saturday morning technically. So you got a couple of days left to go and pick this up if you're interested in Rare Replay. I definitely recommend all the games, or at least most of the games that are on there. We've got some real classics like Banjo-Kazooie, Banjo-Tooie, Conker, all these great Rare classic games. So, if you're interested in that, it is available for the next couple of days at 75% off, I guess is what it says here. So, that's another good deal. There you go. But anyway, thanks so much for watching this week's episode of Ackernews. It's been another fun recording session here, fun gathering all this news over the course of the week. And I hope you guys enjoyed the video. It seems like I was able to cut down on the overall time of the episode by at least a couple of minutes from last week's Ackernews. And that's pretty good, but I do really want to get it down to probably, less than 20 minutes, like 15 to 18 minutes is probably like the ideal range in my opinion. So I might cut out some of the bigger stories next week or going forward. I'm not really sure. Let me know how you feel about that. Would you prefer, less rapid fire news or less big news or the current length that we're going at around right now? And if you did enjoy today's video, consider giving it a like. It's always greatly appreciated and helps me out a ton. And if you want to see more content like this in the future, consider subscribing as well. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and I'll see you in the next one. Ack out. I better get my order in quick for those Razer finger sleeves. Don't want to get behind on my Fortnite match, am I right, brother?